Anyway, this is Spectre, and it's just a visual regression testing tool. It doesn't actually run the test for you. It just processes the images. And I think that's a really neat thing because that's all they have to worry about in their package is processing images. They don't have to worry about setting up with Selenium and all that jazz. WebdriverIO does a great job taking care of that for us. So to set it up, you can get it set up on your local machine if you have Ruby installed. You can run all this stuff. I had some issues trying to do this, so I've been doing just the deploy to Heroku, got that added, and I think I showed this before, but if you have a Heroku account, you just log in and everything, and it's a pretty easy Heroku setup. And what I had going on is, if I jump into my tests, this URL, this is my Heroku page, and it's not secured, so that's one issue, is that it doesn't have any authentication. So it would probably be nice to add basic HTTP auth if you have this as a public site, because you probably don't want people uploading to it and everything. It takes a minute to load as well because it's in Heroku, and Heroku will spin down your server when you haven't accessed it in a while. But once it loads, it's pretty fast. So here are my tests that I've been running. So I've got this test your login page that I've been building out. And let me see if I still have my local host running. Login page. No, I don't. So I probably should start that. Gemini test, that. So many things, so many things. Okay, so test your login is something that I've been working on. It's basically a way to quickly build a page object in WebdriverIO, and this is the page that we're testing. So in my test, I'll just show you real quick what's going on. I've got a WebdriverIO test. I'm loading a library called NodeSpecter that I put together. There's actually another one called Specter Client, and they're pretty much the same thing. I just didn't realize that Specter Client was out there when I started writing this one. Yeah, so use whichever one you want. We'll probably consolidate it down to one. I may just get rid of NodeSpecter in favor of the folks who are writing Spectre themselves, or like who are actually maintaining Spectre. I don't see a need for two different tools out there right now, but for now I'll just leave it here. Okay, so I require that. I use my login page. That's just a regular page object. I've got a user and a password, and then I'm creating a new Spectre client here, passing in the URL to my Spectre client, I guess, or Spectre server. And then from there, I start a run. So this is all inside the before function. I start a run. I give it a name. So this is the name of my run. And then I use a Mocha reference to get the title of my test. So it's going to be login page here. And that's kind of nice because I don't have to duplicate login page or anything like that. From that, it's going to return a run ID. We use this run ID later in our tests in Spectre. So one difference between this and the other one is that the other one will actually return a promise that already has the ID in it, and I really like that a lot better than what I got set up. So that's something to be aware of. I'm gonna run through this real quick and then kind of jump into what NodeSpecter is and what the Spectre client is and how it's all set up. But the first thing is we go to the URL, just the home page, and then I'm only running this one test right now because I was just trying to get it I was just trying to test it. I'm running a command called QScreenshot, and the reason for that is I don't want these screenshots uploading right away. I want them to wait until after the test is updated to run these screenshots. So I'm going to check chat real quick to make sure that I'm not doing anything horribly wrong. It doesn't look like it. So yeah, you're going to see this a couple times. But there's no notifications on chat, which is kind of weird. And what QScreenshot, it takes the run ID, the name of the screenshot that you're doing. It'll take the browser name in, so I'm getting this from the WebdriverIO browser object. and then what size you're taking the screenshot at. And then I'm just doing a save screenshot from WebdriverIO. And this might be a little bit clearer if I did something like this. And then just pass that in, just to kind of say that these are two different things. So, but I wanted to keep it a little bit more one-lined because it was getting kind of repetitious, so that's what I did. And then I do a login, which takes me to a new page, and I do a assertion here, and then I queue another screenshot up. And then after all of my tests have run, or after each test is run, I upload the screenshots. So that's what is going on there. On the Spectre side of things, that would be here. Here's my login page. Oh, good. I've run into this issue before, and I think what happens is that the screenshots aren't being saved. So like the actual screenshot itself gets wiped out because it's on Heroku. So that's a known issue with Heroku. So if you go down this path, your Spectre site will only last for, I don't know, a day, or I don't know how long they hold those images until they clean them out. So you might need to use something like Amazon AWS services or Amazon S3, that's it, to store those images, and that's a known issue. But if you just go to the admin, you can come into projects and select your project and just delete it. And then that's going to clear out all of basically everything in your site. And then if I go back to the main client, you see it's all gone now. With that all gone, I can jump into my login test again and run test. And so this is going to run through that test of loading the URL and all that jazz. So let's see if Chrome pops up. Okay, it popped up. So login page, it's entering the information, and then it's taking a screenshot. And it pauses right here because this is when it's actually uploading the data to the Spectre server. And so that's why it's taking a little bit of time. I might move that to like just completely after all the tests so that your tests run a little bit quicker. I don't know. This is just, it works for now, so I'm kind of happy that it works for now. So here's our new test. I can jump into the suite, and you see here 2 passed because there weren't any screenshots or any baselines to begin with. So here's the pictures that were taken, and Spectre doesn't care what pictures you take in or you pass in. It doesn't really know anything about your page. It's just whatever you tell it. It just is going to take the test name and compare it to the other screenshot. So if I come in here and let's see, I'm going to break the page. So to do that, I'll go to my source directory, into index.html, and I'm going to change my input, and I'll set the font size to 1 pixel and make it important. So if I load my localhost, get rid of that, you can see that you really can't see anything in there, which is bad. But with this type of change, it's not actually going to break your assertion because it's going to let you log in because you can add the text and everything. So that's why I really find visual regression testing valuable, because it can catch things like that where technically you can achieve what it is that you want to achieve, but in the reality the page is broken. So you'll see that it's really small, so it still let us get to the login page. It just didn't, like in reality you couldn't do that. So once this is done uploading, I'll jump back into the Spectre server admin panel, and we will see that there's going to be another run, and there's going to be 1 passed and 1 failed in theory. Okay, so that completed. Yeah, 1 passed, 1 failed. Run number 2, and here, if I click the one failed, you can see this is the baseline image, so what it used to be, what it is now, and the difference between the two. So here you can see that there's a big difference. You'd have to actually look at the page to see that the input is wrong, but it did fail. If it was something that you meant, you could set this as the baseline, and it's going to set that to be passing again, and then you're good to keep going. So that is really cool. You can see the results are right there, and you can have a whole bunch of different projects and then suites inside of that project, and then runs inside of that. So that's the basics of how it's working right now. Again, these screenshots, after a certain bit of time, they're going to phase out, or they're going to get deleted, so this page isn't going to load. So that's an issue. But I'm going to check and see if there's any questions right now. You know what I can do? Pop that out so you won't have to see me all the time. Okay, there we go. So yeah, if you have any questions about this so far, just throw it in there. I'm going to move on to Node Spectre, which is what's going on, which is what we're using in the back to run our tests. So here's an example. That's basically the example I have. Jump into the actual code, and it's a pretty simple library. All it does is get Super Agent, which is a request library for sending requests back and forth to AJAX request, or whatever you call them these days. And it's sending a post. So the first thing we do is we start a run with our project and our suite name. This makes a request to the runs URL, which is what Spectre talks about here. So basically this part of everything. And then we send that information and get the ID back from there. Then there is the upload screenshot call, which takes the ID, the name, the browser width, and screenshot, and sends a request to the test endpoint with all of our proper information in there. You can change the highlight color if you wanted to. So we have it red, but if you wanted to change it to something that matches your company theme or whatever, you can do that. So we're not actually calling upload screenshot in our test. If I jump back to the test, we're calling QScreenshot. And again, the reason for that is we don't want to upload this screenshot right away because it's going to slow down our test and might cause it to time out when it shouldn't. We're calling QScreenshot, and all QScreenshot does is basically add a list of functions to call when we're ready to upload our screenshots. So there's this screenshots array, which is up here, and that when we call upload screenshots, it's going to look through that array, and then finally it's going to actually call that screenshot function, which is upload screenshot. And then when it's going to return a promise that says wait until all these uploads have completed, because this returns a promise. Wait until all that's done before resolving this upload screenshot. And since this is a promise, Mocha knows that it's a promise, so when I return it here, after each is going to wait until they're all uploaded. So I think I could just change that to after, and it should still work. I don't see any reason why that would be a bad thing to do. So let's try that out. I'm going to change this from it.only to run multiple ones. So I don't actually want to take a screenshot before. What I want to do is take a screenshot here, login page with bad email error. And then I'll do another one here of on missing. That's error. So those are going to be the same. I can probably just get rid of those. And then here, I don't need to do two screenshots of that. Basically, login page, unknown, username. Okay. that's good. Basically, it's just different error messages that'll show up if you've got different errors on your page. So I'll run that test. While that's running, I'll check the comments again. Nothing. We're quiet today, which is a sign that you still are stuffed if you had Thanksgiving dinner or celebrated food in general. Oh, so it's still gonna, yeah. I forgot to get rid of that input, but here it's taken all the different error messages and everything, and now it's finally uploading it. So I kind of like that a little bit better because it can run through all the tests and then upload it. Another thing that we could do is tie this into WebdriverIO itself with the configuration file all the way down here after suite. Have it in here. So like in the before suite, I think there's a before suite. Yeah, we could add our this thing right here, all this bit, and then after the suite, we would run this stuff here. I just haven't tried that out yet. I kind of get to a point where it's working, and I'm just happy that it works at all. Oh, the timeout. I think that's okay. Let's see how it uploaded. Yeah, I get to a point where I'm just happy that it worked and go from there. Okay, 4 passed, 1 failed, so that's good. That shows that if I go to that run, everything kind of uploaded. So here's where it failed because it had that old screenshot and because I didn't update the input area. But you see here we've got ours with the error messages and everything. And same thing here. So it's checking, it would check that the input has the red border, that things are the right color and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that is basically how it works. And you see we have our fact that it's in Chrome and it's on the desktop resolution. We could actually filter that down to be, if you have multiple browsers, you can do that. Multiple sizes, you can do that. Like if you're at a different one. If you only want to look at the failures, you see that there. So if I hit set as baseline, just for the fun of it, you see it now marks as passed. It does still keep that diff, but now it's marked as passed. So if I were to run it again, it would all pass. And let's just, for the fun of it, go back into here and get rid of that and see how it changes things. Oh, the other thing I want to do is increase my timeout. So I have it at 30 seconds. I'm going to increase it to 60 seconds. Okay, while that's running, I'll show Specter Client here, which is pretty similar. You create a new Specter Client, you pass in your suite title. Oh geez, that's going to keep happening. Oops. Because it's focusing on the form, it needs to bring it up. That's a benefit of using something like Sauce Labs, is that you don't have your tests interfering with you. So just throwing that out there. We have our URL here that gets passed in. One difference is that this is basically a client. So instead of returning the run ID, they return the client, which has the submit test option on it, which is a little bit different. And I like that because you don't have to track that run ID all on your own. You're just kind of, it takes care of it for you. The one thing that I'm not crazy about is the suite name is here. So if you want to, like, you define the suite name in the same place that you define the instance URL. So if you want multiple suites, you kind of have to reuse this instance URL. It's not a big deal. I just, I don't know, I kind of like setting up the URL first and then the suite and then the test. But yeah, that's basically how it works. It's almost the same thing. If we look in their source code, you can kind of see that it does the same ideas. It's submitting that form data. Having this would have been really helpful for me going in because I wasn't sure how this was formatted for our form data. Let's see, they're using request promise instead of super agent. I don't think that there's any real difference between the two. They both work, so that's great. They actually do some checks to make sure that you have the right parameters in place, which is good. I don't do that in mine. Here's that Spectre Connection. You see they return an object with the URL on it, the suite ID, and then the submit test function, which that's the submit text function. So they don't have a Q screenshot or Q test because that was something that even I added after I had tried out it with WebdriverIO. So just be aware of that. I'll probably try and submit a pull request to see if I can get that added so that we don't have to have two different packages. But if I go back to Spectre, I want to set these as the baseline now. So that the right input size is there. Okay, I'm going to check for questions. Okay, is this using, no, it's not using WebdriverIO screenshot. I'm going to take a look at that next. And yes, Spectre is the one doing the screenshot comparison. So that's something that's pretty nice, is that we can actually use WebdriverIO screenshot, which I'll jump into next. This is good because those screenshots that we're taking were full page screenshots, and that kind of isn't great because if something changes at the top of the page that has nothing to do with what you really want to be testing, it's going to break your tests. So that's not good. So what we're going to do is try out WebdriverIO screenshot. I actually haven't tried this yet. So I'm going to have to cross my fingers that this actually works, but I think it should. So that's installing. I need to add this to my plugins list in my configuration file. So in plugins, throw that in there. So this is normally where you'd set up WebdriverCSS, which I am going to mention in a little bit, something that I got set up last night. But they have a couple of different, or a few different commands that you can run that get added. Viewport screenshot, which I think is about the same. I don't know. I don't know what the difference between viewport and document screenshot is. Yeah. And then you do have to have Graphics Magic installed because that's what it uses for doing the cropping of the image. So what we want is save element screenshot. And I'm going to pass in a file name. I don't know if the file name is necessary. It seems like it would be. I don't know why that's in brackets though. Do you know? Okay. I already have Graphics Magic installed. This can be a pain to install if you've already got like Image Magic installed and like different versions and stuff. It can be real confusing. But if I thankfully I already have it installed and running. So what I'm going to do is say let login form equal browser.saveElement screenshot. I will save the file name. Okay, hold on. I'm too curious to know what happens if we don't pass in a URL, or sorry, a file name. So in here, let's see, commands, save element screenshot, file name. So if it's a string or an array, and element selector is a plain object and undefined. Okay, so yeah, I don't think you have to pass in a file name. So what happens if file name is undefined? Then it returns the image itself. So I think that's a make element screenshot. I think that's probably a stream. Let's make element screenshot do modules. This returns base64 image. Make area screenshot. This is always the fun with looking at really compartmentalized code, is you're just jumping from one file to another. Okay, make area screenshot will return a merge images. Where's merge images? That's going to be under utils. No. That comes from utils images. Okay. Oh, it gets that from graphics magic. Cool. So that's what merge images comes from graphics magic. I'm not going to jump down into that. All I was trying to see is whether it returns a stream or what. But I think we can just pass this in. So we don't need to save this as a file. We will be able to pass this in to Spectre because at least for Super Agent, it's smart enough here when it takes this screenshot, when you do attach, I think it's smart enough to figure out whether it's a path or a stream or a actual image and figure that out. Okay. That will go in. We need to pass in the selector for our login form. This is actually using page objects, so I could get that login form from that page object, which would be form. Just returns the form. I think that's everything that I want for this, so I'll just say that. I think I wonder if that'll work, because I don't know if save element screenshot will take. Ooh, what if we do that? Let's give that a shot. And I'm only going to run this test because I only want to see if this one works. And then I'm going to change this to login form. That's good. I don't know why I have these headphones in, because I was trying to get the microphone set up on that and I wasn't able to get that working. Okay, class validated selector value. So it looks like it actually does need the selector passed in. So just for the sake of this, I'll just pass that in. But that might be something to add to the WebdriverIO screenshot module, is being able to pass in a browser element instead of just the string selector. Oh, that was interesting. It like cropped the entire thing out. Oh boy. I'm taking this red is a bad thing. So it tried to open the file named this. So that's not good. In that case, we will pass in a file name. And that's another thing that could be improved in the Node Spectre side, is if this is a file, like figuring out if this is a file itself and attaching it as a file or not. So that can be improved, but for our needs, we'll just do login form.ping. And then instead of passing in that, we will just pass in the file name. Okay, that should work. Suddenly it seems a lot weirder talking to my computer if I don't have headphones on. It makes me more aware that I'm like in a room by myself talking to my computer, and that's it. So now it's uploading. It looks like it's doing a better job of uploading that. Now it passed. back over here, go back to our login page. And so it ran those, it never uploaded it, so it didn't say that any tests were run. But here, super awesome, we've got we've got just that login form captured using WebdriverIO screenshot. Pretty cool. And then you see here, for some reason, I was clicking with my mouse and I selected your, and so it actually picked that up as a difference. But it says that it passed because it wasn't a big enough, because it wasn't a big enough difference. It says that it passed. So that's actually a feature of Spectre, is you can set the fuzz ratio, is what they call it, fuzz something. Where is it? Screenshot. Somewhere in here, you can set the amount of fuzz, I think. Let me check. Fuzz level, yeah. So in theirs, which is another benefit of this library over mine, is that you can actually pass in options to override the different parts of the test. So that's better than mine, I think. This is a little bit, no, submit test options or submit test. Okay, so submit test, all it does is check for the params and then handles the response and everything, but it passes everything into submit test options. This is pretty nicely put together. I'm quite impressed with it. But you can change the fuzz level in that one. So yeah, that's, if you wanted it to be like super strict, you could do that. If you don't, then it'll ignore stuff like this. And so when you look at your actual test, it'll say that they both passed, which is cool. And then if I scroll down here you can see it's got that login form image. So these are all my baselines, basically. Yeah, so that's Spectre. I think that's all I wanted to mention about it. Computer is freezing up, so that's good. That's what I want. How's this going? Still going. That's good. Yeah, that's Spectre. Still going to do some stuff on it. I'd love to add a WebdriverIO Spectre plugin if I ever had time. That would basically take care of a lot of this stuff for you. So instead of like running this, you would do something, you just do like browser.spectre and then pass in the selector and maybe even like a screen size or something. I don't know. And then it would kind of integrate with it. I really like that. This is something that, a similar thing that WebdriverIO has is the admin panel, which is pretty neat. It's just not quite as functional as Spectre, but if you did want to just try out something similar, the admin panel is pretty cool. It's got a nice little slide. That's something that Spectre could add, is in the comparison between the two, like a slide that you could run to move back and forth between the baseline and the comparison to kind of help see the differences a little bit better. But yeah, that's there if you want it. Where did that go? Anyway, so yeah, that's WebdriverIO screenshot, which is a neat little way of taking smaller screenshots on the page. And this has been updated pretty recently, 3 days ago, so that's good. Something that I would like to see continue to move forward, because this is kind of, in theory, going to be the replacement for WebdriverCSS. So speaking of WebdriverCSS, while this is kind of being built out, WebdriverCSS has kind of sat there for a little bit, and I had mentioned how to install the Dennis Kudlin. Sorry if I mispronounced that branch. But what happens is when you install this, I think the name of this is different from what WebdriverIO is looking for when you run the plugin. And so this doesn't actually work anymore. You have to go into your node modules and rename and that's kind of a mess. And it's hard to like summarize that to somebody, hey, just go run this command. No, you have to run this command, then go into your node modules and move stuff around. Not that great. So what I did was basically fork that branch and create my own messy, ugly, horrible, terrible way of doing it. But I just wanted it to be a stopgap solution while WebdriverCSS and WebdriverIO screenshot are determined. Basically, it's WebdriverCSS. The only difference is I'm saving the build folder to the GitHub output because I'm not actually publishing this to NPM. You're simply referencing this from the GitHub URL. So you do run it through npm install, but this is looking at the GitHub URL and pulling it down from there. So there are some benefits to that, namely that it's easier for me to get it set up because I don't have to publish anything. I don't have to go through all that, the publishing steps and all of that. All I have to do is tag a release in GitHub, and it pulls down this release. And since those are tagged, I think that in here, not there. Okay, so it's actually grabbing the latest here. So that's not ideal. I think there's a way that you can tag by a certain release. But yeah, you can see this is actually grabbing the latest from that GitHub URL. So anyway, easier for me, and it's, again, like I said, it's stopgap. It's not meant to be a long-term solution. Hopefully, I just wanted to make it easier for people in the meantime to run WebdriverCSS with WebdriverIO 4, because I think that the features in 4 are just too good to pass up for something like WebdriverCSS. But you don't need WebdriverCSS if you are going down the Spectre path. Those are kind of two separate things. I would say if you want to use Spectre, then use WebdriverIO screenshot. If you don't want to use Spectre, then use WebdriverCSS, because this is all going to save images locally on your machine. It's going to do the diff itself, and then yeah, use it like this. I don't know, this may have some issues with it, so keep that in mind that this was technically still in beta, and it was never in the master branch of WebdriverCSS. So it may have some issues. From what I can tell, it works, but I haven't tested it on a variety of websites. And knowing visual regression testing, it can be kind of a pain. And just so you know, this visual regression testing is just a common repo that I have with Micah Godbolt, and it's for our visualregressiontesting.com site that has a whole bunch of tools and videos. So if you want to look at all the crazy tools out there for visual regression testing, yeah, this is what we have so far. So I guess I don't know. Next up is to add another one because we could always use more. Okay, so what is the relationship between WebdriverCSS? Okay, yeah. So I think I covered that, but just to reiterate, WebdriverCSS will generate a diff. There's really no. You shouldn't use WebdriverCSS with Spectre. That would be kind of too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing. You either use one or the other. So hopefully that answers that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to cover. Let me just go through my tabs. That, I covered that, I covered that, I covered that, covered that, covered that. Okay, I think I covered everything. And yeah, that, let me see. That was a stopgap for WebdriverCSS. That's on my blog. It's also in my Twitter account if you want to check that out. And the last shameless plug is I made a website called youcraycray.com where it just says that you're so crazy. And it's got a crayfish on it dancing. And you can up the cray as much as you want. Yeah, I just finished. I figured I'd mention that. And yeah, if you want, learn WebdriverIO.com or learn.webdriver.io or learn WebdriverIO.com. Both work. That sort of thing. So I'm currently still working on this wait command since I'm in away from my office right now. I haven't had a chance to really build this out. But one thing that I'm getting excited for is the next part, talking about custom commands and using node functionality, which is really cool. And I'm kind of planning all these out right now, and then looking at all these videos and kind of crying because that's just so many videos to create. But yeah, that's that. So thanks for listening. I'm going to check questions one more. The reason for using Spectre over WebdriverCSS is that the Spectre provides you with this really nice interface for looking through your test. With WebdriverCSS, you have to go in to let me see where I have it. Here, no, just a second. In WebdriverCSS, here, the only way to see your images is to actually open them in your folder and then compare them to each other. And then it also creates like a diff in there. And so it's not as nice of an interface to manage your images, especially if you're working on a team. You want to have somebody kind of add this as part of your code review process, is that it passes through here. You can link to this page instead of having to somehow pass those images around. So that is the main reason for using Spectre over WebdriverCSS. The other thing is that Spectre is being worked on while WebdriverCSS is kind of in flux. I don't know what the word is for that, but yeah. The downside of it, for me, is that it's Ruby. That could be a benefit for other people. But I'm not too familiar with Ruby. I haven't worked with it all that much, so trying to get Ruby set up and all this stuff has been confusing for me and a little difficult. So that's that. Any other questions before I jump out? Amazon's having a sale on board games. I don't see anything. Awesome. Okay, well, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter if you have any other questions. At klamping. Thanks for listening along, and try it out, and yeah, see what you can do. It should be maybe I'll write a quick article about like all the different steps. I mean, it's pretty much here. So just watch through the video, deploy to Heroku, get it all set up and everything. But yeah, thanks y'all. Have a good one. Now you get to see my repeated face.